to see some familiar faces. Set up the presentation. I'm really delighted to be here. It's rare for investors like me. Most conferences I speak at, I do a quick poll and I ask them how many investors in the room, and 80% will raise their hands. And I'm going to ask you a question. How many teachers and educators in this room today? And that's fantastic. This is the audience I love more. So I'm so happy to be here amongst our customers. Quick 2 or 3 questions as we warm up. How many of you have heard of Kangaroo Kids? I like it. Billabong High. Euro Kids. Euro School. Okay. Edu Sports. All right. Educational initiatives. MindSpark. Asset. Excellent. Look, this is great. These are some brands from our portfolio of education. And we have Lena sitting here as one of our founders of Kangaroo Kids. So it's great to see you, Lena. So today I'm going to spend about 9 or 10 minutes talking about artificial intelligence, machine learning, EdTech, and how this is delivering the holy grail, the promise of personalization and improving learning outcomes. But before that, how many of you have heard of AI or know what AI means? All right, and ML? All right, not bad. And EdTech? And how many of you use EdTech in any form in your schools? Okay, this number needs to go up, right? And hopefully, after this presentation, we would have created at least a conversation for you all to have around EdTech. Where do I point this to?
Anywhere.
Talk to something like that. So very quickly, everyone knows the macro. I want to make the assertion, I say this a lot in investment conferences, India is the most attractive private education market in the world. And we had a few gentlemen from Glasgow and the UK in the panel before. This has changed in the last 15 years. When I started investing in 2005, we would apologetically come and say, look, we've got a large number of people, but the market is really tiny. It's really small. But 15 years to present day, I can tell you that we are a very large and attractive market, not only for entrepreneurs that are running schools, teachers that are teaching in schools, but also companies that we've invested in, that service these schools. It's a very large market. And what's driving this market? It's the large number of people, of course, but we have many Indias. We have a large population of 190 million households that are just looking for access. If you build it, they will come, right? You have a very sizable population now of nearly 80 million households that are looking for quality. Their big preoccupation is, I go to school, my children go to school, but what about quality of learning outcomes? Am I really moving ahead in my life? And then there is an increasing population of 15 million households in the top metros and so on that act like the UK. Their needs are no different from the households in Melbourne or Sydney or the UK or even parts of the US. And so you have a very interesting concoction in India of 3 kinds of households with different needs and therefore opportunity. The other thing that has happened in the last 15 years, and I'm just taking that horizon because I've been investing for that long, is that the mobility, personal devices, everyone has a phone in their pockets today. Mobile devices, internet, and increasing affordability have expanded the occasions for consumption of education. Education's going beyond the 4 walls of a school. They're going beyond curriculum. So if I were to look ahead 10 years down the line, you're going to see education consumed increasingly at home, after school, in neighborhoods. We're all becoming lifelong learners, and technology has allowed this transformation. And if you were to extrapolate this for the next 50 years, the next 100 years, this will have fairly dramatic, very dramatic changes that will affect all of us as educators, as school owners, as leaders in education. But let me just quickly give you get the definitions out of the way. So what is artificial intelligence? And there are a lot of keywords here, but it's basically a computer system that performs or automates tasks that normally a human would do. So for example, let's say, one of the tasks that teachers do is correcting papers, right? After you administer an assessment. Now, if you are correcting a multiple choice question, it's tedious, it takes a lot of time, and a computer can do it faster. But if I tell you to get a computer to, check an essay on Julius Caesar written by Shakespeare, most of you in this room would be very skeptical that a computer could do that. And that's because it's complex. It's not just tedious and costly to do, but it's also complex. And what artificial intelligence is doing or has done over the last few decades is it's catching up to human intelligence in terms of complexity. So today, as we speak, you use artificial intelligence already when you use Google Maps, or when you talk to Alexa or Siri, or if you're watching a movie on Netflix, or you're buying something from Amazon, they have artificial intelligence embedded in it, which is not called artificial intelligence because now it's commonplace. And 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, you will see edtech tools that are driven by artificial intelligence and machine learning in your world. You just won't know it. You will find tools that can help you check a Shakespearean essay and give you qualitative and quantitative insights that can help you do your job better. You just won't know that this is driven by artificial intelligence. Just like today, if you want to translate something, you would go to Google Translate, type out something in English, and get the German equivalent without really knowing the technology behind it. So it's going to be as pervasive as this. And therefore, EdTech is really a set of tools. It's like, PowerPoint or Microsoft Excel or the Uber app that you use on your phone. It's really a tool that helps you make your life easy, improve productivity, and I will shortly tell you what the holy grail of EdTech really is from an educator's point of view. What is the problem? The problem is that we are filling up our schools, but our learning quality is where it was, or actually, if you see it in parts, in decline. And this is not true just for India, this is true around the world. There is a learning crisis. And that's a problem that the world has to grapple with. We talk about 21st century skills, but we're not even delivering the basic skills of the past in an effective way. And fundamentally, everyone knows Benjamin Bloom, right? Bloom's taxonomy is popular amongst educators and so on. And I found this really interesting. Way back, I think in the 1980s, Bloom did a controlled trial or a study. And he said that, look, the only proven way to dramatically improve learning outcomes is if you can deliver two specific things. He called it the 2 sigma problem. One, can you deliver mastery learning? Anyone who plays sports or teaches sports or understands sport, or a musical instrument, for example, knows intuitively that the way you gain mastery in a musical instrument or in playing sport is that you master one level, one skill, and then move on to the next. So if you're a coach of a football team, you will never allow a player to go from dribbling to something else till he masters one skill. So that's what Bloom speaks of when he talks about mastery learning. That gives you a 1 sigma improvement in learning outcomes. But the second is one-to-one tutoring. So if you want dramatic improvements in your classroom, all you have to do is deliver one-on-one tutoring to your students. So if you take a step back, what does that mean? It means if you have a class of 30, in some cases 50, it's going to be extremely costly, almost impossible to deliver one-on-one tutoring. And very few people understand mastery learning, and they don't even know how to deliver it. And this is where the promise of EdTech comes in. But the problem with EdTech is that if you just delegate the whole system to EdTech and you replace a teacher with a set of screens and headphones, you're not going to get the Bloom's promise. And so, here's my take on EdTech, right? So there are a lot of people who are creating the Amazons and Netflix and Ubers for education. I think what we really need to do is to create the Google Maps of education. The Google Maps, as you know, has the ability, data-driven, to know where you are, where you need to go, and what's the most optimal path to get there. And that's the job of an educator. And EdTech has to deliver on this two-pronged, promise. It has to deliver personalization, so it has to allow a teacher in a class of 30 for every student to have personal instruction, and it has to take a student through a path of mastery learning and essentially deliver the promise that Bloom spoke about. I have a short video to just tell you how this works, and it's just a couple of minutes and you'll enjoy it. This is MindSpark in Himachal Pradesh. Can we have the volume up, please?
There will be no volume. Imran, there is no volume in your video. There is no volume.
It's not possible to do, or?
I think you'll have to narrate, or you'll have to give a little live commentary. Originally, in the original video, there's no volume. Might be true.
So anyway, this is in a government school in Himachal Pradesh, and this is MindSpark in action. I'm a little disappointed because I would have loved, that girl at the beginning was speaking in Hindi, and she basically said, look, forget about, she's not talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning and EdTech. Her big thing was, listen, I was really scared of math, and after MindSpark, I love it. I love it. And she, and this is her talking about her aspiration. She's talking about how MindSpark works, how there's storytelling, how I'm excited when I get something right, and how I'm a little disappointed when I get something wrong, right? And that's going to come. There you are. So, here's the human engagement part of EdTech and how it's working with millions of students around the world across socioeconomic backgrounds, the rich, the poor, and so on, and it's getting the world's best technology at scale and at low cost. So I'm going to just skip that, and I think at the core of EdTech's promise is demonstrable hard evidence of efficacy. If today when you go to a doctor, you expect that he will diagnose you through in a scientific manner. He will prescribe medicines that work in your body in a scientific manner. That's the expectation of education as well. I'm happy to say that MindSpark, for example, and there are many other tools around the world that have proven efficacy. But it's good to see that you're able to explain to educators and schools that if you use this product, you will get something out of it, and the results are fairly dramatic. To give you an example, if EdTech were to deliver what Bloom wanted, a 50th percentile student could move to the 98th percentile by just doing these two things: deliver personalization and deliver mastery-based learning. That's a pretty dramatic, that's the difference between someone not doing anything at all productive in his work life versus, making it to the college of his choice or a career of his choice. But EdTech without data is a rocket without fuel. And so, when you look at EdTech tools, it's not very relevant for a lot of you, but one question that I would ask if I was evaluating an EdTech tool for my school is that, give me evidence that you have data. Tell me what is the fuel behind your insights, right? And what does it mean for you to be artificial intelligence or machine learning ready? I think the foundation is the most important. How do you collect data? What kind of data of students do you collect? And what kind of insights are you able to give? And I'll summarize it in 3 questions. What happened in the past, right? So you look at the data and explain what happened to the students or similar students in similar grades in the past. What could happen in the future? And what should we do about it? One use case of this, if I can use a business term, is if you're a 5th grade student and you have a certain competence level in fractions, what is the prediction that this student will do well or not in calculus in higher classes? And if you're able to give a data-driven insight on something as granular and specific like this, you could have dramatic improvements in your 10th board exams, 12th board exams, or college, etc. I've been told my time's up, so I will just stop by taking a minute with your permission. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So we were talking about the science of medicine. It took 100 years for society to go from care. There's a reason why we call health care. Because 100 years ago, if you were sick, you were sent to to a city by the sea for better air, or you were sent to a hospital to just recuperate. And the doctors and the nurses around you just took care of you. They didn't know what you were suffering from, and they had no clue how to solve the problem. Education is going to take far less time to get to a point where we have science of learning, but we believe it will follow the same data-driven approach that medicine did 100 years ago, where it will be commonplace for educators to act like doctors with diagnosis, with data, with a clear understanding of what the misconceptions are, and tools to address those misconceptions and thereby ignite learning. So I'll stop here. You've been a great audience and a patient one. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jafar.